Hey, Tony Gaskins here. Now listen to me. Something for you to think about. And it goes both ways, but I'm gonna just keep it one direction right now. But this applies across the board for men and women. But the Bible says a faithful man who can find. And when you read that, it's like, wow, like this real. And I don't think it was, talking about just one specific type of faithfulness, like a faithful man in a relationship, but just a faithful man in general, like a man who won't steal from his job, a man who won't cheat on his wife, a man who will be faithful to God. And so often I see these comments from women in my comments and other comments, and it always is saying this stuff like, oh, my man won't do that, or this type of man will never do that, or this type of man will never do that. And it just reminds me of how little we know about each other. And what I want to assure you is that the man you meet is going to be imperfect. And it reminded me of that today. My wife sent me this screenshot of a page that posted Jonathan Majors, and that two other women have accused him of emotional or physical abuse. And I was like, man. And I was like, what is Megan gonna say now? And it's like, yes, men can change. I work to change my life, and I'm still working to grow and be better and just be more emotionally intelligent and more confident. Like these things that we work on, this is a daily journey. Like every day you got to work on it, because the way the mind works, a lot of times we have more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. And a lot of times that can hinder us in our relationships. And this could be with men and women. But again, I'm a man, so I'm speaking from a male perspective on this. But so, of course, everybody always say, oh, it could go both ways. That's understood. But I want to assure you that the man you meet is going to be imperfect. And you have to be able to choose what type of imperfect man you can deal with. So, with every action, there are consequences or rewards. Like they say, with every action, there's a reaction, equal or greater reaction. So, you have to look at this man's flaws, and you got to see, okay, what comes with this type of flaw. So, a man with an anger problem, that's going to lead to some things that could get out of hand. A man who is insecure, but his insecurities are more so internal, and it doesn't turn into anger. It's more like he's hard on himself and he doesn't always believe in himself. That's a much better flaw to deal with than a man who has a temper, a man who is addicted to something. When you look at what type of addiction it is, if he's addicted to working out and eating super clean, yes, it may be annoying when you want McDonald's or you want to go to Popeyes and he's like, no, never. Yes, it may get on your nerves, but that's a much better addiction, quote unquote, that he has than being addicted to a particular drug or addicted to pornography. And what I notice is a lot of women choose their flawed men wrong. So a lot of women will choose a man who is addicted to like addicted to marijuana. And therefore he can't even go out of the country for 5, 6 days on a nice vacation unless he goes into the hood somewhere in that country and try to find him some weed, which he could get laced, he could get robbed, a lot can happen is just because his body will start to have withdrawals because he's addicted to this particular drug. And women will overlook that and not think of like, okay, what comes with this particular flaw. And so that's what you have to do. You got to create your own risk assessment calendar. I think it was not calendar, but scale. I think it was Along Came Polly, and I believe he was a risk assessment manager or auditor or something for like an insurance company. And remember, he was with the older guy who liked to skydive and liked to ski and all of that. And he was assessing the risk to insure this man, to get this man life insurance. And I never forgot that, of assessing the risk. So when you look at things, you got to see what it's attached to. And you got to see what the man, what his flaws are, but then also what his strengths are. Because sometimes his strengths can cancel out his flaws, meaning his strengths can turn his weaknesses into strong points. An example is if a man is controlling, like, or jealous, or insecure, or just self-doubting, self-hating, and that's his weakness, that's his flaw. But one of his strengths is he loves God and he wants to get closer to God, and he reads his Bible and he prays. Now you have a situation of the flaws being able to be offset, the flaws being able to be corrected and turned into strengths because his strength is stronger than his weakness. But let's say a man has all those same things. He's insecure, jealous, controlling, but then his outlet is to go gamble, to go smoke weed, to go watch porn. Now his weaknesses are fueling his flaws, which are also weaknesses, and it doesn't add up. So one thing you have to understand as a woman is you're going to 100%, no matter how long you wait, no matter what race you date, no matter what age you date, no matter where you date, you're going to meet a flawed man. The same way you are flawed as a woman, and you've never met a woman without flaws, you will never meet a man without flaws. But as the saying goes, pick your poison wisely. So you have to be able to look at, okay, what does this turn into? Take this flaw, take this weakness, and then multiply it by 3. And that's what it's going to be when you in a relationship and you comfortable. Now, take the strengths and multiply them by 3. And that's what they're going to be if you recognize and reinforce those strengths. So this is something that has to be understood. And it's not easy, but nothing irks me more than hearing women say, oh, a man of God will never do that. A man of God will never do that. And it made me think about that when my wife sent me that. I was like, man, you know what? That's pretty much when it said Jonathan Majors was abusive, emotionally or physically abusive. And I'm like, that's almost every black man because of the self-hate. And notice I said almost every. So it's not every, but those of us who it is no longer us, it don't mean it was never us. It don't mean we didn't grow through it. Don't mean we didn't heal and grow through the power of Christ. So, but when you look at a black man in America, what black man in America do you know, or probably anywhere in the world, without trauma or without self-hate? That's a very rare thing. And so, and on the flip side, it may show up differently. Like in a woman who has experienced trauma or self-hate, for her it may be insecurity. She might not be physically abusive. She might not be emotionally abusive. It may be insecurity. It may be controlling. It may be jealousy. And so we have to understand that based on the history of the person and the biography of the person equals the makeup of who that person is. And what you got to identify is, what is the person doing to grow, to heal, and to change. Now, something like what Jonathan Majors is going through, I believe this is something that can push him into change, because him being with Meagan Good and her like, whoa, now what about this? He may set out to prove that he's not that person, that these women are blowing things out of proportion, that they're turning molehills into mountains, and that he's not that person. And so this is the type of thing that happens with men, to where when a man hits rock bottom, or when a man is exposed, he is called out, he's held accountable, he's embarrassed. A lot of times that's what changes humans. When we have to pay the piper, when we gotta face the music, face the consequences. A lot of times that's the only thing that'll change us. And especially with men being hard-headed. So you gotta think about that. You gotta think about that. And really process it. And what I've noticed is, it's every human. It just shows up different. Like, some people may just be very manipulative, very, like, they may use reverse psychology all the time. They may have a victim mentality. They may throw a rock and hide their hand, or what they might call like gaslighting. They may do stuff like that. Whereas other people, they wear their emotions on their sleeve, and they're very blunt and straightforward, and they could be hurtful. Some people may react physically, like they lose it and they don't have the words, and they want to slap or push or choke or whatever. And this, men and women. But this is what you got to assess when you meet somebody. What are their flaws? Because everybody's going to have them. And if you meet someone and it appears they have no flaws, they have no weaknesses, take your time. Do not get excited. Take your time. Do not get excited. Slow your roll. Pump your brakes and give it more time. You got to give it as long as you need to give it until you see that flaw. When you see that flaw, that weakness, now you get to assess it. And when you assess it, it may be something where, like, oh, you know what? This is an internal flaw. Like, this is something that it's gonna trip him up or her up. It's gonna trip them up. It's gonna hurt them, but it ain't gonna hurt me. Like, this flaw that this person has will hinder him or her from pursuing their dreams. But that's not gonna hurt me. That's something internally that they gotta deal with, and I can encourage them to believe in themselves and to pursue their dreams. But that's not actually harmful to me, unless it makes them lazy and they just kick their feet up and they're a couch potato. Now it is surfacing in other ways, and you got to be mindful of that. So I want to prepare you that what you're dreaming of and what you're fantasizing of, it won't be all the way that. And you're going to have to assess the risk and kind of pay attention. Hey, this is Tony Gaston, the agent calling me. God blessing me. God bless you. We'll talk soon.